There are professions in this world, and anyone can take their profession of calling, whether you are a clown, a servant, a steward, a mercenary, or a swordsman. Loud cheers could be heard in the arena as he once again defeated his opponent in the arena. This man has been dubbed godlike. His name is Fuda. Did I mention that everyone in this world has a profession? Well, our protagonist has no profession. You could say he's unemployed. And because of the fact that our hero has no profession, but every time wins, it makes people very angry, because Fuda cannot be called a swordsman, because he fights the same way, and so every time, saying that our hero just get out of here. Fuda thinks about the fact that all people know the unemployed as the weakest people in the world. But he doesn't agree with that, because he's been training and practicing. The hero has worked hard to get to this place, and all the opponents here were extremely weak for him, and he could play with them as a toy. However, in reality, fate led our hero to the wrong path. Walking through the streets of the royal capital, Fuda enters a bar, where everyone looks askew at our hero. The bartender behind the bar says he has never seen Fuda before, asking if he has any money. Fuda sits down at the bar and says he has no money at all, so he asks the bartender if he has a job. And the bartender wonders what his profession is, but soon learns that our hero is unemployed. Fuda takes a flyer about escorting a man for 300,000, but the bartender is reluctant to accept the offer, since Fuda is unemployed, so he agrees to pay him 50,000. Fuda agrees, so he asks for food for the money, and although the bartender again reluctantly agrees, he feeds him, and then Fuda goes to the place where he will meet the man. Fuda is skeptical about this order, because for a normal conversation with someone, he will get 300,000 and it seems like a trap to him. But suddenly, Fuda feels a tense aura coming from this girl who is sitting by the fountain. The girl starts to stand up and says that apparently Fuda is the person who accepted her request. And it turns out this girl didn't even know that because of this aura, people have been avoiding her for years. And at the same moment, Fuda starts to sit away from her, thinking that there's an unpleasant odor coming from him that will bother her. But the girl is still on Fuda's scent, especially the place stank before him. Fuda thinks that this girl doesn't seem like a bad person, and it seems like she really just came to talk. And before they start talking, Fuda thanks her for asking, since it means a lot to him, but the girl thinks there's nothing to thank her for. Then Fuda says it means a lot to a jobless person like me. Because if you are born without talent, you automatically become useless and useless to society. Fuda tells the story that he worked in a foreign country not more than 2 years ago, but for one reason he messed up badly, so he was kicked out of his job and even the country. And since then, he's been grasping at every straw, hoping that things will get better. The girl looks down and repeats the word unemployed, saying she understood, and then wonders what Fuda was doing before he was kicked out. And Fuda says he was a gladiator, to which the girl was very surprised. Fuda reports that he was a gladiator with no qualifications in other professions, but he was confident in his abilities. The girl stands up and says that this is a good opportunity, and then offers Fuda a duel, and she will pay for the duel separately, which shocks our hero a bit. Fuda doesn't understand what's going on, and it looks like the rich have their own entertainment. The girl informs that Fuda is the first person to show up after her request, and it will be her first duel. And she's eager to see what Fuda can do. After all, he's the man she's been looking for so long. Fuda suddenly remembers his past life as a gladiator, where the audience was not happy with his next victory. Meanwhile, Fuda's aura darkens and it is noticed by the girl. She then also gives him a spare sword so that their duel can begin. And as their duel begins, the girl immediately disappears in front of Fuda's eyes and then reappears and delivers a flurry of swift blows. Stepping back, Fuda thinks this girl is very good, hoping that he has satisfied her tastes, but then she uses a lunge and attacks Fuda again, who once again blocks her attack. What the girl was surprised that Fuda noticed her approaching him and blocked her attack. Fuda couldn't understand anything at all as he couldn't feel her aura. Fuda notices that she doesn't speed up any further, and apparently that's her limit. And her fighting style requires a lot of discipline, but Fuda has seen this before. Her fighting style is to stay away from her opponent and wait for a chance to attack, and it looks like this is a technique she was taught at the academy. Their swords make contact again and later they step back to take a breath. For this girl, Fuda has long passed her test, but because she enjoys fighting so much, she wants to continue and show Fuda all she can do. She uses the court style of swordsmanship. Rain! But Fuda isn't a fool, he's just copying this technique with his ability. Therefore, her technique meets the exact same technique from Fuda, which surprises this girl. And unlike the gifted, Fuda has no talent, so he had to train and succeed on his own. He became stronger by copying the techniques of those who were stronger than him. But at one point, while standing in the arena, he was insulted and insulted just because he fights only one style. Which of course shocked Fuda, because he had trained so long and hard to achieve such results. But the spectators didn't care, they wanted Fuda out of here as soon as possible. And while Fuda was thinking about it, a girl took the chance to attack him, but Fuda immediately dodged and tried to strike her with his sword. But the girl blocked his attack. The girl smilingly says that Fuda must have spent a lot of time practicing, which surprises him a bit. Fuda smilingly thinks that with his imitation, he will go beyond what she showed him. And then he uses the thunder roll technique, which again stuns the girl, since she hasn't shown this technique before. And so, after this attack, Fuda points his sword at the girl, and that only meant victory. But the girl wasn't upset, she was having a lot of fun. But Fuda didn't understand anything at all, wondering how it was so much fun. Wasn't this a challenge? But that didn't matter to the girl. So Fuda smilingly says he had a lot of fun too. The girl says that it must be fate, raises her sword and says that Fuda passed the test. Oh no, he passed it with flying colors. After all, Fuda had surpassed even her, and it was all thanks to his hard training. So the girl decides to invite Fuda to live in her house as a guest, but in return she demands to train with her whenever she wants. And she'll also provide him with food, clothes, blood, and anything else he just needs. Which again shocks Fuda. After all, is it normal to have a man like Fuda by her side? But the girl with confidence in her eyes informs what she sees the true value, so she won't let anyone object to that. And then she begins to introduce herself. This girl's name is Lilakim Fanini. She is the first princess of this kingdom, as well as the person who stands at the head of the government of these lands. And then she says, "You just pointed a sword at the princess. Is that considered a threat?" But it's more important to her that Fuda agrees to it. And then she asks him about the decision. Fuda falls silent, but then says, "For me, as an unemployed person, to get a chance like this, to be wanted, just as I am Fuda." And then apologizes for not being able to make such a great performance as this princess. But Lilac says it's okay since they're comrades now. Fuda notices the look on the girl's face, and it was full of joy and happiness. And it was very beautiful. In Fuda's flashback, he fought a long-haired guy in the arena who resented that none of his techniques worked on him, as if he knew where Fuda would hit. Plus, Fuda's style is the same as this guy's, except Fuda is many times stronger than this guy. Later, Fuda is declared the winner, where the audience is again outraged that he won again. A little later, outside the arena, he is met by a female warrior that Fuda has never seen before. She notices that Fuda is relaxed, considering what just happened, and then says that next time she will definitely make it to the finals, but before he can say anything, Fuda just walks past her without paying any attention to her words. She's upset because Fuda doesn't recognize her at all, but she thinks that the time will come and she'll show how strong she is. Fuda washes up in the bathroom, and then an old man in a hat walks in, looking like the slave trader from the anime Rise of the Shield Hero. As it turns out, this was the owner of the Colosseum, who informs him that no matter how hard our hero tries, he won't become a champion unless he gains recognition. After all, he lacks natural talent, the old man informs us. But all our protagonist wanted was to be recognized, but as soon as everyone finds out that he is unemployed, immediately hang the stigma of worthless. And even his training didn't matter, so the hero doesn't know what to do. And then the old man in the hat says that he will make sure that Fuda gets the recognition that he so desired. Soon after, our hero is kicked out of the country. Then he's called by Lilac, who notices he's thinking about something. And frankly speaking, Fuda himself would not believe that someone was a champion and then became a bum, to put it mildly, if he had not found himself in this situation. And he can't believe that he ended up being a guest of the princess. Then they come to the cemetery and the hero thinks that it is not normal that the princess walks in such places. Lilac says it's not okay, but also tells Fuda not to say anything to anyone. It's just between you and me. Then they also approach a cave of some sort. But Fuda still doesn't understand what this girl wants and why can't she tell anyone about their training. Then Lilac wonders how he copied her technique since she didn't show it to him. But Fuda explains that he knows all the styles of his opponents. Fighting in the Colosseum, Fuda learned to read and reproduce the movements of his enemies, and he didn't care what kind of weapons they had, because he was always stronger than them. But still she doesn't understand, so why would he copy a technique she never showed him? And then Fuda remembers being told he was worthless, because all he can do is just copy his opponent's technique. But Lilac thinks that makes him the strongest of them all. And that confuses and surprises Fuda. And Lilac doesn't understand why they kicked him out, knowing Fuda's abilities. She starts thinking that the Colosseum owner could use Fuda to make the Colosseum more popular. But still it doesn't matter, to her Fuda is very strong and it's all thanks to his hard training. Saying to make Fuda proud of himself, as she knows how much strength it takes to do that. After all, it doesn't matter what the people in the Colosseum think of him, she appreciates his efforts to become the strongest. And then Fuda starts to think that he doesn't care what her plans are for him. After all, she's the first one who appreciated his hard work and effort, and that's all he wanted. Lilac then tells the protagonist that they need to find a way to prove his strength, because since Fuda is unemployed, people will be suspicious of him, since no one knows about his strength but her. And then he thinks about the fact that they can say that he was the champion of the Colosseum, but then he remembers what the manager or the owner said, that he promised Fuda that he would give him the recognition he wanted. Lilac asks if everything is okay, and Fuda nervously says everything's fine. Just then, the princess tells Fuda to be her guest, and also that they have found a manifestation of Fuda. The scene changes, and as it turned out, the staircase leading to the top was the staircase to a posh mansion. Fuda, crawling out of the fireplace, was surprised by the poshness of this royal castle. Lilac says that he is her guest from now on, so she will prepare a room for him, and also needs to do something about his appearance. But unfortunately Lilac says she has to leave because of her political duties, but she will ask her maid to look after Fuda, which Fuda was surprised to hear that he will be looked after by a maid. Lilac says she's one of her most trusted associates, but she can be a bit eccentric, so it's best if Fuda treats her well. And when the princess leaves, Fuda can't believe what's happening to him. He was homeless and now he's a guest of the princess. Then some girl with pigtails comes in through the window. As it turns out, it was that eccentric maid named Krona-chan. Fuda asks, "So you came at the princess's request?" But Krona doesn't want formalities, because people love young maids who are cute, and she's come to take care of Fuda. Our hero remembers the princess' words, but he thinks the word eccentric is a bit of a misnomer for this girl. Then he asks why he had to come in through the window. Krone answers that it was to avoid suspicion, but Fuda thinks that's exactly what arouses suspicion, and then tells Fuda that Fuda is not a regular guest of the princess, but a secret guest. And if people notice the maid going into an empty room with no guests, that would be strange. And then she notices his height, which is about 2 meters. But his appearance is horrible, so Krona wants to get rid of that sad look first. In another scene, Fuda is taking a shower, and he can't even remember taking a shower like this in the last 2 years. While enjoying the shower, Krona runs into him, asking if he can get rid of these things, which of course scares our hero. He then offers to give him a bath, but Fuda simply refuses. Krone asks Fuda not to behave like this. After all, if you think about it, everyone has their own weirdness, and if Fuda wants, she can call him brother. But Fuda doesn't like this arrangement, as he just wants a proper bath. But Krona does pester him, telling him that it must be nice for him to relax and chat with the cute maid. And Fuda smilingly thinks it is. Then it's Fuda's turn for hair, as he clearly needs a different hairstyle. Krona offers him the same hairstyle as hers, as the length of his hair allows. But Fuda refuses, as he clearly doesn't want that hairstyle. Krona then asks Fuda what he did to convince the princess, what Fuda doesn't quite understand. As it turns out, the princess didn't tell Krona-chan anything about their duel between them. And then she asks Fuda what his profession is, because it doesn't look like our hero is a healer. And then our hero remembers how people treat the unemployed, but still tells Krona-chan that he's unemployed. At the same time, Krona-chan wonders if that's the reason why the princess invited Fuda to her house. Or is it because of Fuda's personality? Just then, Fuda's face changes and Krona-chan doesn't realize what's wrong. As it turns out, Krona-chan doesn't care that Fuda doesn't have a profession, because all that matters is that the princess approved of our hero. Krona-chan thinks it's wrong to humiliate someone just because they don't have a profession. And then she finishes her haircut and we see the new version of Fuda 2.0. And Krona thinks it's awesome and Fuda thanks her for it. And then also, someone starts walking up to the room where Fuda and Krona-chan were. A little later, Krona-chan and Fuda had a delicious lunch, and Fuda was grateful for it. He tells Krona-chan that it's the first time he's had a proper meal in a month. If it hadn't been for the princess, no one would have given him such a treat, and he might have gone on starving. Then Krona-chan asks him which food was better, the food he used to eat or her food, and his life depends on his answer, and then Fuda wonders if Krona-chan herself made all that food. Fuda remembers that the princess told him to have the maid take care of him, and that's when he finally realizes the meaning of those words. So Fuda immediately tells Krona-chan that he says with certainty that this food was tastier, and Krona-chan says that he's probably trying to cheer her up. But Fuda is just saying that he didn't have to eat alone today. After all, food always tastes better when there's company. Food tastes so much better when Krona is around. And those words make Krona-chan's eyes sparkle. And while the boys were having a nice conversation, someone bursts into their room. It was some nobleman with his guards. Fuda wonders who they are. The nobleman says that he came here to meet a guest of Her Highness Princess Lilac. Then they ask Fuda what his profession is, and Fuda says he is unemployed. In the end, the guards or the nobleman's entourage start laughing at Fuda. that Her Majesty Princess Lilac brought an unemployed man here as a guest. She must have invited the first person she met since she has no one to talk to in the palace. And one of them says that it's somehow not serious that she invited an unemployed man here, and that's why he thinks she's weird. But that just gets Fuda all worked up. He thinks back to their last conversation in the cave when they hadn't reached the palace yet. Fuda asked her why she had invited him as a guest. Lilac, on the other hand, said that she wanted to become stronger, and for that reason she was asking for his help. But Fuda was surprised that she wanted to become the strongest, since it was better to look for someone with a profession for that. But with confidence in her eyes, Lilac says that she invited him because he is strong. She tells Fuda that it doesn't matter what his profession is, because his strength has fascinated her and she wishes to know more about it. But still Fuda wonders why she wants to become the strongest. But all Lilac says is that the moment will come and I will tell you everything. And then smiles and tells Fuda to tell her everything about him, even if it takes forever. Back in the present, Fuda thinks about the fact that he doesn't care about being mocked, the fact that he's unemployed. And strangely enough, it doesn't bother him. However, he remembers that Lilac was the first to recognize his skills and accept him for who he is. And at the moment, they are mocking the man who saved his life. Clenching his fist and with eyes burning with anger, he says he won't let them do it. But this moment, Krona-chan interrupts and hits this high-ranking nobleman with a mop. And everyone was shocked. And Krona just says that she just wants to clean his filthy mouth. Krona-chan says that the gentleman's face was very dirty and he needed to wash his mouth out after saying such horrible things to the princess guest. And she doesn't understand why all aristocrats are like that. And Fuda doesn't understand what Krona-chan is doing. The nobleman grabs a mop and with an angry face tells her that he wasn't mocking him. Krona asks, "Is that true?" And the nobleman says yes. The sycophants immediately start being rude to Krona-chan, not understanding how she dares to treat Mr. Richard like that. But Richard yells at his entourage and tells them to be quiet. He asks them to stop making remarks, as they might regret it. Krona then emits a small magic ball from his finger. In that ball was a recording of their conversation, of them insulting Fuda, which leaves Richard's entourage and foe to himself in shock. But what they don't understand is, how does a servant girl use magic? Krona says she wrote down everything they said and now she can accuse them of disrespecting the royal family. And that's when Richard realizes that Krona is Princess Lilac's maid, but he doesn't understand why she is here instead of in the library. And now Krona thinks Richard is a stalker because he's following her. He then tells Fuda that climbing the ladder was a good idea. Fuda asks Richard what they want and why come here. Richard says it's nothing personal, he just found out that the princess brought a commoner as a guest, so he decided to see everything in person. But Fuda doesn't understand why it's necessary to drag all this crowd with him. But Richard did it for safety reasons, because you should never underestimate a commoner. And as they start to leave, Fuda asks Richard, "Are you an enemy of the princess?" Richard says there is no reason for that, for the princess is the most respected and beloved person after the king. Then Fuda asks about Richard and Krona says Richard, but she calls him Moppy for some reason. Anyway, she says that Moppy is the leader of the so-called aristocratic group. Fuda asks if the aristocratic faction means that much. And Krona-chan confirms what Fuda says and says he does business with Her Majesty that way. But then Fuda doesn't understand why she hit him so easily with the mop. Krona says it was the princess's plan. And it turns out she was the one who started the rumor that Fuda was in this place, since she was the only one who knew of his arrival. But Fuda doesn't understand why she's doing this. But it's all to make it easier for the princess to introduce Fuda and she wants everyone in the castle to know about him. Then Krona comes closer and asks Fuda about, "Did you really get so angry with the way they were talking?" And she thought Fuda was going to kill someone. But Fuda just refuses and says he's not capable of it. He's thinking that Krone can't know he's a former arena champion. And maybe she only hit Richard with the mop because she didn't want Fuda to do anything bad. Fuda asks Krona-chan about her magic and Krona jumps on the bed and with a playful look tells Fuda to do it faster so he can immerse himself in the princess's scent. But Fuda says he's not a pervert. And then the bedding lifts up the top and tucks itself in again, which surprises Fuda and he realizes it's recording magic. And Krona-chan merely noted the past state of the bed and returned it to its original place. Krona is surprised at how smart Fuda is and as a reward she shows the picture of the sleeping princess. With all this in mind, Fuda thinks that Krona's profession is chamberlain. Chamberlains can be found among servants, secretaries, and retinues. And this profession is for caretakers and guards, but they can't use magic. After hearing all this, Krona-chan is outraged that Fuda thinks she looks like a chamberlain. And then she asks, "Do you really think someone who makes fun of guests and beats up aristocrats can be a chamberlain?" But then Fuda doesn't realize what her profession is, and Krone says she'll tell him when Fuda's sympathy for her is a bit more. But looking with a mischievous smile at Fuda, she says she'll drop a hint to him from time to time. but her profession is one of the weakest. All she can do is just banter with others. And having said all that, Chrono-chan tries to get the hell out of here. She says she's going to make something tasty to make everything that came before seem like garbage to Fuda, and then disappears out of sight again. Fuda looks out the window and realizes that it's already evening. As evening came, so did Princess Lilac. She had been looking forward to this moment all day, but only half of the day had passed. Then the princess stares at Fuda and can't understand what's wrong, and then says that Fuda looks very good and she likes it, which makes our hero blush at the compliment. Lilac asks if Chroma is gone. Fuda reports that she's overflowing with energy today and is indeed a bit eccentric. Still, he is grateful for her help. And the princess says that it's very good and she's glad she sent Chrono-chan to him. As it turns out, the meeting between the princess and Fuda was thanks to Chrono-chan. Chrono-chan said that the princess should talk to the stranger, so after that, she honored her request. Fuda, thinking about it, realizes why Chrono-chan knew about the request but not about the duel. But he was wondering why Lilac was looking for someone to talk to. But Lilac just says she had nothing better to do. But no one showed up and she just ended up wasting her time. And looking at her, Fuda thinks she's creepy and realizes why no one approached her, since she had a terrifying aura. But nevertheless, Lilac met Fuda and now she may not be able to fulfill Chrono-chan's requests. Then Lilac also asks Fotu if he has any idea what she's expecting right now. Fotu is a little puzzled by this and starts thinking about the wrong thing. He says he doesn't know how useful he's going to be, saying he's even prepared for broken bones as a sign of loyalty to her. And something about being a strong man. And those words shocked Lilac more and more each time. She asks Fuda about, "Were you trying to say something cool? Did you even know what I meant?" said Lilac. She tells Fuda about their arrangement. But Fuda really doesn't seem to understand how he can help her. But Lilac is tired of being told that, because Fuda is very strong and should be proud of that. And she says that instead of hearing him say weird things, she'd rather spend time with regular Fuda, which is what she really wants. She tells him that even if the best poet comes and performs her favorite poem, it doesn't matter. She won't let anyone stop her from spending time together. Fuda starts to get embarrassed, and so does Princess Lilac. Fuda then says that the princess overestimates him. But Lilac just smiles wickedly at his name and Fuda asks her to forget what he said and apologizes. She asks him, "Didn't you say you were confident in your strength and skills?" "Why doesn't Fuda believe her?" says Lilac. And Fuda tells the princess again that she is the first person to ever appreciate or praise his strength. She really is the first. He was very happy that she recognized his efforts. And Fuda thinks that even he doesn't believe in himself as much as she does. And that's when Lilac smiles and says that apparently there's nothing to be done, and then holds out a sword to Fuda and says they should fight as many times as they need to. And then smiling tells Fuda to take the sword. And with determined eyes, says she's going to show him how much she's in love with him, which makes him a little nervous. We learn that a girl named Lilac M. Fonini is known as the strongest swordsman in the country. No one could match her strength, so many stayed away from her. Her powerful aura is the fear of being from the royal family. Her strong soul and high intelligence all shielded her. Everything she had worked for, everything she had achieved, she alone had done it all. But that was all before she met our protagonist. Fuda wonders if she's sure, since he thought their training would be a secret. The princess says that this garden is privately owned by the royal family. And she also paid the people who work here. So she asks Fuda to have some fun, and Fuda agrees with her. Pulling out his gleaming sword, he tells the princess that he will do his best. The princess looks at him and says okay, and then immediately tries to hit her blind spot and then uses a sharp kick. But Fuda, knowing this, just blocks her attack with each time. Looking at Fuda, Lilac says Fuda must have gotten involved by now, and then uses the court fencing style, rain. She talks about calling this technique rain because there is no one in this world who dodges, not even just in this country. There is no one who can stand against this technique. But watching Fuda, she realizes that this is not the case. Fuda uses her copying style and copies into the court's rain swordsmanship style. Their techniques start to touch and Lilac just laughs at this point. Fuda looks at her and calls out to Lilac, at which point the beautiful princess just looks at him smiling and says that she's really having a lot of fun. She talks about how every time they cross blades, Fuda shows her what she's not capable of and what she hasn't accomplished yet. Also telling Fuda that it doesn't matter how strong he gets, because he doesn't stop trying. And he shows her the fact that there are still levels she has yet to reach, and that she can still grow. Fuda, hearing her words, thinks about the fact that she doesn't think his style is vacuous like other people before her thought it was. But that's exactly why Lilac wants to beat him. When their swords cross, the princess says to Fuda, "You and your sword, there is no limit to what you could accomplish. That's what your sword makes me think about." And Fuda thinks about the sword in question. But then, The princess uses the court style of swordsmanship, the lightning strike, and their swords make contact at that moment, creating a powerful lightning charge. But in the end, the princess loses again. But still she says something that she wants to do it many more times, starting from this moment. Fuda smilingly says what he understood, and if she accepts it, then he will do it as many times as she wants. If you want to see the second part, let's get 500 likes and also in the comments write the secret word, swordsman. That way I'll know that you've seen this video to the end. That's all for now, see you later and bye bye.